Now, earlier this week, Piers Morgan tweeted a reply to Henry Winter in relation to his opinion on David Beckham. He tweeted, "I didn't say he was bad, just overrated. Beckham wouldn't get anywhere near an all-time England 11, and as for his 6 clubs, he wouldn't make an all-time United, Real Madrid, Milan or PSG team, and would struggle to make Preston's. But on a positive note, he would get in LA Galaxies." Now this got me thinking. I agree with Piers Morgan. I won't often say that. Beckham would not get in an all-time England 11. I don't think you can look past the 1966 final team. But it got me thinking about who would be the best England team I could pick based on my own experiences. So I'm in my early 30s, so I thought I'm going to pick my best England 11 within my living memory. So from the year 2000 up to the present day, so for the past 22 years, I am going to be choosing who I think is the best 11 to play for England. So I know this one's going to have a lot of different opinions, so please leave below in the comments your thoughts, your opinions. I guarantee you now you probably won't agree with a lot of these picks, but here we go. So before I get into this starting 11, I just want to clarify some points. The team I'm picking will be based on a 4-4-2. That doesn't mean that each player is going to fit those positions or exactly played in those positions entirely, but it's just the easiest formation for me to pick because it allows me to pick 2 centre-backs, 2 full-backs, so on, so on, so on. And finally, this pick, this 11, is not the best English 11 of the past 20 years. It is not. It is the best, I think, players who have played and performed well for England with the Three Lions badge. So there may have been a lot of players who have played an awful lot better for their club but may not have done so well for England. So right before I name my first player, I'm just going to give some context to this. So for the past 22 years, there has been a potential of 11 tournaments England could have qualified for the Europeans and World Cups. I'm not including the UEFA Nations League. Out of those 11, England qualified for 10. We all know what happened in 2008, don't we, Steve? Now, so my team will be picked mainly on players who have done well in those tournaments because I don't think you can get anywhere near this if you haven't performed well for England within a major tournament. So without further delay, let's go on to my first pick. Right off the bat, I am going to be absolutely controversial here, and my first pick is Jordan Pickford in net. Now hear me out, because I know there's a lot of hate for Jordan Pickford, but think about what he has done in an England shirt. I think Jordan Pickford has played a huge part in the last 2 tournaments, as getting through to the semi-final and the final of the Euros. He's made important saves in key moments in each of those tournaments, including he did absolutely everything he could possibly do in that penalty shootout final. I'm thinking going back to the Colombia save he made just before they scored from the resulting corner. But Jordan Pickford for England has been absolutely sensational. Absolutely sensational. And his record in tournaments, what he's achieved with England, it's going to be a struggle to pick out players who have done well over the past tournaments, or not to pick out players who have done well, sorry, over the past 2 tournaments, because that's as well as we've done in nearly 50 years. Pickford, I think, has been pinnacle to that. I am not saying at club level other English keepers haven't been as good, if not better than Pickford, but I think wearing the Three Lions shirt, Pickford has been the best goalkeeper in the past 22 years. So for me, Pickford starts in goal. Now I'm going to start with left back because right back was really difficult and I'm actually still thinking about it now. So my left back choice is Ashley Cole. He won a lot of caps, played really well for England across multiple tournaments. It's very close actually between him and Shaw, because I know it's going to look like I'm picking players in very recent memory, but Shaw scoring the goal in the final, he's played well in previous tournaments under Southgate where we've done really well, but I just think the number of caps really for Ashley Cole just pushes him a little bit ahead of Shaw and some of the consistent performances he put in. So Ashley Cole for me goes left back. Centre back positions for me, John Terry is going to be one of my centre backs. I think the fact that he was captain for quite a few times. So for me, Terry was more of a leader in the England squad. So for me, Terry definitely gets in there as one of the key centre-backs for England over the past 20 years. The next one is very controversial because I'm leaving out Ferdinand. I think Harry Maguire deserves his spot in these 2 centre-back positions. The reason why is because Harry Maguire has been absolutely, like Pickford, has been so pivotal to England's progress in both the last 2 tournaments. And you cannot, I'm going to be saying this a lot, you cannot cannot discount how well we have done and how important it has been. We will look back in 20 years' time and a lot of these players now will be in ahead of the golden generation. I guarantee you. Harry Maguire for me is one of them. He was absolutely so important in the World Cup, scoring goals, and in the Euros, even though he went there injured, when he did come in and step in, he was absolutely fantastic, a real leader at the back, been an absolute solid rock for England at both tournaments, and I think he's done more than Terry, and arguably Terry and Ferdinand has arguably done more than in tournaments, that is, for England. So for me, Maguire has to be in there, but Terry just gets in above Ferdinand because of how many times he captained the country. So for me, Maguire gets the nod above Ferdinand. Now, right back is a huge dilemma. I am struggling now. There's four, really. There is four players. There's Gary Neville, there's Glenn Johnson, who, remember, was England's right back for many years after Gary Neville coming towards the end of his career. Cannot discount, Walker and Trippier. They haven't got as many caps, but they've been absolutely brilliant, and I can't decide. I'm going to go with Trippier. I think Trippier has been the best right back England's had in the past 20 odd years. His set pieces, I think he's better on the ball than Walker. He's calmer, he's a better passer. He's been a real leader. He's going to be one of those, I promise you now, in 20 years' time, him and Walker, we will look back on them fondly as some of the best players we've ever produced. For me, this is going to have a lot of different opinions, but for me, I think Trippier has been our best right back in the past 20 years. I really do. That brings me on to midfield. So on the right of midfield, I've got to go David Beckham. I have got to go with David Beckham. Now, I actually don't like what David Beckham stands for now. I think he stands for everything that's wrong with the world, materialism and all that rubbish. But as a football player, people look back now and actually underrate him because of the way he is now, because of his celebrity status. Beckham for England, when I was growing up, was the only player I ever saw with passion, with heart, literally run games on his own. I go back to the Greece game, the penalty against Argentina. Even when we failed to qualify for the Euros, I remember Beckham coming on, setting up Crouch late in his career to almost drag us through that. Beckham has been an absolute wondrous player for England. He was absolutely fantastic throughout all his career. He wore his heart on his sleeve for his country. If all our players would have put in the same performances like Beckham did during his time with England, that golden generation would have won something. For me, Beckham is the right mid, the best right mid we've had, in my opinion, in the past 20 years, and deservedly, for me, gets in that position. Now, the two central midfield areas are difficult because you've got players now in Rice and Phillips who achieved more than the two obvious ones in nearly 8 tournaments, and they've just done it in 1. So having said that, you cannot discount, obviously, Gerrard and Lampard. They are going to be my two central midfielders. They're both, for a long time, carried England for a long way. I just want to say, though, just because players are getting 100 caps doesn't mean they automatically get picked here. I don't see players winning 100 caps, particularly almost 5 or 6 of them within one 10-year gap, as an achievement. It's actually a really bad reflection on the English national team during that period, because it just shows the lack of competition and the lack of fighting for places and the lack of strength in depth. So I don't see 100 caps as automatically an inclusion into this squad. I think that's a ridiculous argument. But Gerrard and Lampard, you cannot deny, particularly in qualifying, even going back to starting tournaments when they've scored goals. Lampard's goal that wasn't allowed against Germany, Gerrard's goal against the USA to start us off, even though we ended up drawing that game. So they have turned up in tournaments. For me, Gerrard and Lampard are the best two, but if, and it is a big if, and it sounds mad, if Rice and Phillips have as good of a World Cup as they did at Euros, they would go ahead of them for me, because that means that they'd have done more in major tournaments than either of them two ever did. For me, they're part of a team that's done more. But in the time being, Gerrard and Lampard go in England's best central midfielders over the past 20 years. Now, I've put on the left, not strictly a left winger, but Raheem Sterling, and the reason why is because you can argue he's a winger. I couldn't put him on the right because Beckham was there, and I wanted to fit him in the squad because I definitely believe he's been one of England's best players just for the Euros alone. I cannot remember, apart from Rooney, when he first burst onto the scene in the Euros, I cannot remember a single better performance or tournament, from an England player than Raheem Sterling just put in at the Euros last summer. That, for me alone, gets him in this squad. Up front, there's only really 2 options, aren't there? Harry Kane, because he's going to break the record, let's be honest. He will break it this year, well within the caps as well, compared to another player who I'm going to mention in a moment. Harry Kane will become England's all-time goal scorer. He's won the Golden Boot already at a World Cup. The only England player to do that, I believe, over the past 20 years. So for me, Harry Kane, one of the two strikers. And obviously the other person is Wayne Rooney. He obviously had the best tournament, one of the best tournaments from an England player ever at those starting Euros. He didn't really push on then. Let's be honest. I know he broke the all-time goal-scoring record, but his career, looking back, arguably should have been better. When you look back at all that promise, arguably should have been better, particularly who he was surrounded by. But that's the same for all that generation, the golden generation. But Rooney obviously deserves to be in here, absolutely 100%. So that is my England 11. I know for a fact that over the past 20 years, I know for a fact a lot of people will not agree with those. I absolutely take that for granted, but this is what I'm saying. The best players I've seen perform for England in those positions for the past 20 years. Please let me know your comments below. Try and be respectful. We'll all have different opinions on this. But thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video.